Very good evening, and welcome to the second session on the essays on the Gita. The chapter that we'll be reading today is on the divine teacher. It is a beautiful chapter, has some um, amazing kernels of truth. Um, and I thought what I would do is to first um, well, actually, it's a question. Would you like me to read the whole chapter from the beginning, or would you like me to read uh, the important passages? How would you like to work? Any suggestions? And very welcome to the online participants. I see we have quite a number here. But as you're all muted, you'd have to send a message on the Essays on the Gita group. What would you like from the beginning of the chapter? Would you like a summary and then important passages? How many of you read the chapter before the class? Yeah, the divine teacher just now. Okay. What is your view? No? I think a summary and important passages. Okay. Yes. And then discussions on that. Okay. So, um, I think the first important point that the Gita, this particular chapter starts with is the occasion for the teaching. You know, it's not a class in philosophy. It happens on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the Mahabharata, where Arjun has to take a very, very important decision, and he's in a terrible dilemma whether to actually fight this battle and slay his cousins, his uncles, his entire family on one side, and of course the Pandavas on the other. And I think the occasion of the Gita is extremely important because um, it lays the foundation for a practical, uh, what should I say, philosophy, not just something that you can use, is not mental, but you can actually apply in life in very critical moments of your own life. Um, and that I think the chapter starts with that the Gita is not a philosophical treatise. It is not the fruit of a spiritual life, of a creative personality, like a Christ or a Muhammad or a Buddha, or of an epoch of pure spiritual searching, like the Vedas and the Upanishads. Very, very important. But it arises from a critical moment in the soul of one of its leading personages, face to face with war on the battlefield, facing his cousins and uncles. Um, and therefore, it's the application of ethics and spirituality to human life. I think that's the most critical thing to understand. Human life. It's an application of what? Ethics and spirituality. Now, many people question what is so ethical, but this is where you have the presence of the divine teacher. So the chapter starts with this very important introduction. Um, the three things in the Gita which are spiritually significant, almost symbolic, Sri Aurobindo says. One, the divine personality of the teacher. Two, his relationship with his disciple, who is Arjun. And who is Arjun? He is the representative man. He is a representative of the best of humanity. He is, in a sense, uh, a very, very special person himself. He, as Sri Aurobindo describes that later, his relationship with his disciple Arjun, and the third is the occasion of his teaching. What is the occasion of the teaching? The worst ever war between two very big clans in the Mahabharata war. So the occasion of the teaching, um, yes, the occasion of the teaching also is the struggle, the whole struggle that takes place. So the teacher is God Himself. The first, the divine personality of the teacher, which is what we are studying in this chapter. The teacher is God Himself, descended into humanity. So who is this divine teacher? He is the avatar. Now you all know that in the especially in the Indian tradition of of philosophy and of life, we have always had the descent of the divine in a human form to lead humanity to the next stage in evolution. So the teacher is God Himself descended into humanity. The disciple is the representative man of his age. So he represents his age. And here he is the chosen instrument of the avatar. Why is he the chosen instrument of the avatar? Is a very important question. Why not Yudhishthira? Why not Bhima? Why Arjun? Does anyone know the answer? Because all were warriors. Bhima was a great warrior. So do all of them. They're all men. Why is he close to Krishna? That's what I'm trying to ask you. Why is he being chosen? Okay, Shibani wants to answer. Can you unmute? Well, you can unmute it. Let her speak. Because anyone else? Yes, yeah. I think when the avatars will come, and today also some that's all right. Let's get to the point. Shibani? Okay.
Basically, there are three key points which point to this. One is why not Yudhishthir, why not Bhim, and why Arjun? So why not Yudhishthir? Because Yudhishthir, in his own sense, wasn't so-called the epitome of dharma. So explaining dharma to him would have overwritten his concept. Secondly, Bhim was very rajasically controlled, and Arjun was the only person who had demonstrated complete surrender to Krishna, which is the most
Right.
important aspect.
Right. So you've touched it. That's right. So another way of saying it is that Arjun is the one who was most open psychically. You see, he was the most open psychically to Krishna, and as Shibani said, he was surrendered. He ha- Others had their own sense of who I am and what my dharma is and what I should do and not do. That surrender to Krishna was very, very important. And the whole of Sri Aurobindo's yoga, those who know, is based on one principle. Most important principle is surrender. And the Gita is also based on that principle of surrender. To be able to surrender your own ideas, your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own sensations, your own love, your own family, your own attachments, your own, everything, and be guided only by the divine is not an easy thing. You might think it is. It's very difficult. And Arjuna had that. So Arjuna had the psychic very open and surrendered to Krishna. And that is why he was chosen as the special instrument of the avatar, the divine. So, second, three things in the Gita which are spiritually significant, almost symbolic. Now, symbolism also comes into it, almost symbolic. Second thing, disciple is the representative. We've done that. The teacher is God himself, so the avatar, the disciple. And the third, the occasion is the violent crisis of and the moral difficulty, the blind violence of the event. Just a terrible thing. It's like you can, I mean, something close to what happened there. You could say, closer to our time would be which war? World War. Yes, because it was a terrible war. And in fact, he almost refers to it as a world war in the chapter. So this is an extremely important thing in the Gita. So these three spiritually significant and symbolic things. And therefore it is relevant to us and to our time. And it is perennially relevant. And that is why we're so attracted to the Gita. Now, um, India strongly held from ancient times the belief in the reality of the avatar. This belief has taken firm root uh, in the consciousness of the race, of our race. Yes. Unlike the West, where exoteric Christianity, theological dogma prevailed. Now, the, the title of this chapter, The Divine Teacher, if you, there's a beautiful line, and if you think about it, the divine teacher, sometimes people said, why did he not guide Arjun through when, Yudhishthira, when they were going to Vanvas, and some of the difficulties that Arjun had to go through. Why does the teacher appear and disappear? And that is very important to understand. The avatar of the divine does not always come whenever you want him to come. He will come. He wants you to evolve as a human being. He wants you to be able to face the difficulties of life. And that is the same for us in our own lives. You will see that sometimes we are left on our own devices, no calling to the divine, nothing is helping us. And we have to fight it out and we have to struggle and the pain and the suffering of it all. And yet, and at critical moments of our lives, if we look back, you find the presence in the hand of the divine. The same happened in the Mahabharata. Krishna left Arjuna many, many times, without any kind of answer, any kind of succor, whatever. But at critical moments, he would appear. And in the Mahabharata, Sri Krishna came as his charioteer. Do you think he could not have fought? Do you think he could not have uh, been a warrior? No, but he said, no, you fight, I will guide, I am the charioteer. So this is very important because it explains um, the importance of the avatar and why is there a need for the avatar in human evolution? Why is there a need for a Christ or a Buddha or uh, you know, sorry, who are the other avatars? Or, yeah, Sri Ram. So these are partial avatars and full avatars. There are many, like, some Sri Ramakrishna is considered a partial. So the different vibhutis, avatars, they're different forms of manifestation of the divine. So the avatar is, of course, the full manifestation in human form. So this is something that what Sri Aurobindo points out is very much in our consciousness. It's in our racial consciousness. The Indian subcontinent has been it's in our genetic makeup, which is very different to what it is in the West. Now, the fourth point, the historicity of Lord Krishna. In this chapter, Sri Aurobindo also deals with the historics. Does Krishna actually exist? Was there Krishna, or was it something that was philosophically made up by the writer? And the historicity of Christ has often been refuted by several people, saying that no, that there was a different Krishna there, and there was a different Krishna there, and there was some Krishna, but he is not the same, and so on and so forth. However, what he says is, for seeking the kernel of the thought of the Gita, we need only concern ourselves with the spiritual significance of the human divine Krishna of the Mahabharata, teacher of Arjuna. The historical Krishna no doubt existed. We meet the name first in the Chandogya Upanishad as the knower of Brahman. So the name, it starts from the Chandogya, where the knower of Brahman, Krishna, is mentioned, and the name of Dhritarashtra, son, is also mentioned there. A son of Vichitra Virya. In the Gita, Krishna is represented both as a historical character and the avatar, both. The Gita accepts the human avatarhood, for the Lord speaks of the repeated and constant manifestation of the divine in humanity. But stress is not laid on this aspect of the avatarhood so much in the Gita. While it is mentioned, while Sri Aurobindo dwells on it, the stress is on what in the Gita? Not on the idea that, he is, that this is this is the avatar and this is so and so. You only get a sense of it, however, but on the transcendent, cosmic, and internal divine. So the stress is laid not on this aspect, but is laid on the aspect of the transcendent, cosmic, and internal divine. Now, um, transcendent because the Lord, because Sri Krishna or the Avatar is the source of all things. Cosmic because he's the master of the cosmos of all, and the internal divine is the individual Godhead, secret in man. So these are the three aspects that the Gita specifically dwells on. It is this internal divine or divinity which the Gita speaks of as the doer of violent asuric austerities, troubling the God within, or of the sin of those who despise the divine lodged in the human body, or of the same Godhead destroying our ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge. So, this I want to actually read because it's a bit, what should I say? Um, it's a bit dense. So, we'll go through that. Now, this in general uh, is what the chapter deals with. Right. So I just go to page. I'm going to read the last two pages because I think they're very, very important. The others have been quite easily summarized and are easy to understand. Page 17. Oh, so it may be different in your book. The paragraph starting, but all this, though of considerable historical importance, has none whatever for our present purpose. We are concerned only with the figure of the divine teacher as it is presented to us in the Gita, and with the power for which it there stands in the spiritual illumination of the human being. The Gita accepts the human avatarhood, for the Lord speaks of the repeated, the constant manifestation of the divine in humanity, when he, the eternal unborn, assumes by his Maya, by the power of the infinite consciousness, to clothe itself apparently in finite forms, the conditions of becoming which we call birth. So, But all this, though of considerable historical importance, the page before that talks about whether Sri Krishna actually existed or not, and where his name first came up, and so on. So from there, Sri Aurobindo transits to here in the Gita, we are concerned only with the figure of the divine teacher. As it is presented to us in the Gita accepts the human avatarhood, for the Lord speaks of the repeated, constant manifestation of the divine in humanity when he, the eternal unborn, assumes by his Maya, by the power of the infinite consciousness, to clothe itself apparently in a finite forms, the conditions of becoming which we call birth. But it is not this upon which stress is laid, but on the transcendent, the cosmic, and the internal divine. Okay? So, of course, Yuge, the avatar keeps coming and taking birth into the human form. But he says what is laid stress on is the transcendent aspect of the avatar, the cosmic aspect of the divine teacher, and the internal divine, the fact that he is also the individual embodied soul in human form. It is on the source of all things and the master of all, and on the Godhead secret in man. And this Godhead is secret in man. So these three aspects of the divine are something that the Gita uh, lays its stress on. It is this internal divinity who is meant when the Gita speaks of the doer of violent asuric austerities troubling the God within. So this internal divinity is troubled when the outer nature of man practices what Sri Aurobindo very strangely and very interestingly calls the asuric austerities. Is that clear? What what is happening here? Right. So I'll explain. So what is asuric? Austerities you think is a wonderful thing. No? I thought as much. So what is asuric austerities then? The two words together. So the divine resides in you, right? The divine is enshrined in each of us. The divine presence, the divine entity is in each of us. When we, by our mental, what should I say? How do I put it? When we try through violent means to reject that and to accept only the transcendent divine and want to escape to that plane without acknowledging and understanding and nourishing the internal divine, your soul, your presence, which is the divine, and you don't see it. You only think the divine is something outside of you, something to go to. So what you do violent, and according and Sri Aurobindo uses the word asuric there, which is very interesting because if you see the essence of the Gita, teaching of the Gita, it 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 helps us and moves us towards what? Surrender and love and compassion, and yet to do one's work without any expectation. Now, how do you have love when you don't love yourself, when you don't love the divine in you or the divine in other human being? You're only interested in some transcendent sort of, hmm? And so you do all kinds of asuric austerities on yourself, which is a violence done on you. And that is why the word asuric austerities. It doesn't mean that all austerity is harmful, but that is done violently with disregard to the divine presence, not acknowledging it, is asuric austerities. So now listen to this line again.
Many traditions always consider the source of sin and evil.
Yes.
There is not torturing of the body.
Yes, you have seen these, you've heard about these books, and I'm sure you read them. You know, where they whip themselves. What is that very famous book that Dan, whoever writes? No, no, no. What is it? Dan, Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code. Yes, those who've read it or seen the film. And there are several other sects like this that are there. Well,
Even in Jainism,
they're all
festivals where they
right. Mohammed.
but another in Hinduism also, for example, Ravan was practicing austerity. So that he did tapasya for so many years.
There is Asuric austerities. There it is for a selfish, egoistic purpose without complete disregard to the divinity in himself and to grow that. So there, it's different forms of that, yes. Okay, so let's read that again. It's very important. Now, it is, but it is not this upon which stress is laid, but on the transcendent, the cosmic, and the internal divine. It is the source of all things and the master of all, and on the Godhead secret in man. It is this internal divinity who is meant when the Gita speaks of the doer of violent Asuric austerities troubling the God within. This God within is this internal divinity that the Gita speaks of. Or so there are three things. One, God within. Two, of the sin of those who despise the divine lodged in the human body. So here you would have a Ravan who despise the divine lodged in the human body, or that's the second. So those who despise the divine lodged in the human body are openly and overtly and consciously asuric. One, those as a second lot. And third, or of the same Godhead, destroying our ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge. The third is an interesting one. What does this mean? So this Godhead secret in man has three aspects. That is that the first two seem to be more in the nature of self inflict, almost hostile, Surik. The third is the same Godhead destroying the internal divine, destroying the ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge. The third is of different character and nature. It is the it is the
scientist or anybody who talks a lot, intellectual, and but they justify basically non-existence of
okay.
divine.
The scientist, you call it. Okay. All right. I don't know. So let's continue. We'll come to that again. I want to complete the sentence. Um, or of the same Godhead, destroying our ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge. It is then the eternal avatar, this God and man, the divine consciousness always present in the human being, who, manifested in a visible form, speaks to the human soul in the Gita, illumines the meaning of life and the secret of divine action, and gives it the light of the divine knowledge and guidance, and the assuring and fortifying word of the Master of existence in the hour when it comes face to face with the painful mystery of the world. So the third is actually the same internal divinity or divine that destroys the ignorance through knowledge. So the blazing lamp of knowledge is a positive, it is through illumination. So it's not a soul destroying event or divine, it is a soul fortifying one. So therefore, and this qualifies in the next sentence, it is then when it is this third thing the eternal avatar, the Godhead destroying, or the internal Godhead destroying our ignorance by the blazing lamp of knowledge, then it is then the eternal love, the third one. This God in man, the divine consciousness always present in the human being, who, manifested in a visible form, speaks to the human soul in the Gita. So, this eternal divine consciousness, or this God in man, manifested in a human form through the form of the avatar, right? So, who manifested in a visible form, sorry, not even a human, but a visible human form, speaks to the human soul in the Gita, illumines the meaning of life. What is life? What is the meaning of life? And the secret of divine action, and gives it the light of the divine knowledge and guidance, and the assuring and fortifying word of the Master of existence in the hour when it comes face to face with the painful mystery of the world. This is what the Indian religious consciousness seeks to make near to itself in whatever form, whether in the symbolic human image it enshrines in its temples, or in the devotion to the human guru, through whom the voice of the one world teacher makes itself heard. Through these, it strives to awaken to that inner voice, unveil that form of the formless, and stand face to face with that manifest divine power, love, and knowledge. Is that clear? Any questions or any comments?
There are comments and questions.
Yes, please go ahead.
One, they want to be unmuted so that you can
Yes, so
speak.
please unmute them as long as they don't have noise behind them and they are not. Yeah, because otherwise, yeah, they don't participate.
Just let me read the questions.
Questions?
One question with Jayashree posed was, how is the charitable important, especially in war? Then Jayashree writes,
No, the earlier one, the one she's first said. No, we are now. Don't go on to that.
No,
I'm
it's
not.
posted in this chat.
Okay.
Ego-driven actions are utterly
Yes.
to fulfill vital beliefs and goals like fasting.
Hmm.
Ignorance due to the earlier mentioned, destruction of ignorance. Ignorance is the due to earlier mentioned acidic tendencies. Gita 3 has written, I am understanding, therefore, he is warning us from asceticism and or using satanic means, using our bodies like low tantra to achieve quick means to reach God. Then the spirit of us told the spark of the divine in us is trouble.
Yes, that's true. So I'm sure you heard that, and that is all true. These are the asuric perversions of, uh, of of nature that do take place, and they are mostly ego-driven, as Jayashree as clearly and quite correctly said. And what is the significance of the what? Charioteer.
Yeah.
Significance of the charioteer. Well, the charioteer, let's get other glasses next time. This one's only for reading and they're high, too high for me. So that's why I'm removing them. Okay, so uh, so the significance of the charioteer in as what do you think is the significance of the charioteer? Have you unmuted them? Yeah. Okay. Why is Sri Krishna the charioteer in the war of the Mahabharata? Why is he Arjun's charioteer? What does the charioteer do? And not the person who's driving the chariot or the person who's on another, somewhere else.
Symbolic of our body.
Symbolic of what?
Our body, in the sense
Who is the
that
charioteer in
It's the
ourselves?
soul. It is the
Sorry?
psychic being. It's the
Who is that
psychic
speaking?
being, the soul. The charioteer is the soul that guides us through life. And in the
Right?
Mahabharata war, Sri
Hmm.
Krishna becomes the charioteer and guides Arjun throughout the war, literally and physically. Even in battle, he takes his chariot to those places where he needs Arjuna's action to be performed. So it
So,
is the guiding light, the soul within,
hmm,
symbolically. That's what Krishna's role. And that's why he doesn't engage in battle. He is a guide, the divine teacher, and he
so who is,
maintains that status.
yes, good. So therefore, who is the charioteer in ourselves? Who is your
The
chariot?
psychic being, the
That's
psychic
right.
being.
So the divine, internal divine is the charioteer. And there in this is personified symbolically, Sri Krishna is the charioteer of the Gita, of Arjuna. Shivani, go ahead.
A few other points is that a charioteer is the one who steers the symbolism. So one is the inner divine
Right.
Krishna. He is steering the human soul, number one. Number two, he is not taking direct action, which is the most important point. He lets Arjun believe he's the doer. So this is
Yes.
also one of the symbolisms of being an avatar. And
Hmm.
being a chariot means the one who that the person sitting on the chariot has given complete trust. I trust you to lead me. So Arjun had complete, because if the charioteer cannot lead you through the most critical moments, it could mean death for you symbolically. So Arjun says, I'm giving myself in your hand. So Arjun literally, so Krishna doesn't take the horse's reins, he takes the reins of Arjun's life by being a charioteer as an internal divine avatar. So
Excellent. There we are.
beautiful.
Also kind of
Collective wisdom.
relates to surrender.
Yes.
Because he surrendered.
Yes. Surrender. Yeah. Good. So
Think
let's continue now.
there is also somewhere the element of chariot being the vehicle in that sense, and somewhere we are the ones who are sort of guiding also. I mean, so somewhere the responsibility is also on us to, yes, charioteer will take us where we want, as we want him to take us forward. So there is an element of us taking the responsibility as well as a, I mean, when we sort of, it was,
Yes,
yes,
I understand what you're saying, but in this case, yeah, the responsibility, the surrender, the responsibility of driving of the charioteer is really Sri Krishna as the divine teacher. He is the
mm,
human avatar that has taken over the reins of the chariot of Arjuna, who is his disciple. And the next chapter you will read about it of the human disciple. So, in that sense, this is more relevant here. So, it is then the eternal avatar, this God in man, the divine consciousness always present in the human being, who manifested in a visible form speaks to the human soul in the Gita, illumines the meaning of life and the secret of divine action, and gives it the light of the divine knowledge and guidance and the assuring and fortifying word of the Master of existence in the hour when it comes face to face with the painful mystery of the world. This is what the Indian religious consciousness seeks to make near to itself in whatever form, whether in the symbolic human image it enshrines in its temples, or in the worship of its avatars, or in the devotion to the human guru, through whom the voice of the one world teacher makes itself heard. Through these, it strives to awaken to that inner voice, unveil that form of the formless, and stand face to face with that manifest divine power, love, and knowledge. And these three, the divine power, love, and knowledge, are the three most important, uh, you know, yogas of the Gita. And of course, the whole synthesis of yoga is built on this. So, secondly, there is the typical, almost the symbolic significance. So, the first is this. What is the first? The Gita accepts the human avatarhood, and then it accepts the fact that there are three aspects: the individual, the cosmic, and the transcendent, divine, and all three are equally cherished and valued and nourished. Especially the internal divine, which is the individual divine, is what is emphasized in the in the relationship of Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Now, after that comes, secondly, there is the typical, almost the symbolic significance of the human Krishna who stands behind the great action of the Mahabharata, not as its hero, but as its secret center and hidden guide. So this is very important. The symbolic significance of the human Krishna who stands behind the great action of the Mahabharata. He is not the hero of the Mahabharata, but he guides it as its secret center and hidden guide. That action is the action. It's a representative, it's symbolic of the action that takes place every day in our world. Those of us who become conscious of our inner divine, those of us who are half conscious, semi conscious, or fully conscious, feel the guidance of the divine behind our own works, behind our own lives. And that's why this is so symbolic. The way that it is being done and the way that the Gita, the way that Sri Krishna and Gita are in that relationship. Secondly, there is the typical, almost the symbolic significance of the human Krishna who stands behind the great action of the Mahabharata, not as its hero, but as its secret center and hidden guide. That action is the action of a whole world of men and nations. What is this action? The whole world of men and nations. This reminds you of the World War. No, it's not just something that is happening in some small place. So this action of the avatar of the divine teacher as the hidden guide and center is the action of the whole world of men and nations, some of whom have come as helpers of an effort and result by which they do not personally profit. Some in the Mahabharata has come as, these people who are fighting the war are helpers of the effort, of an effort and result by which they do not personally profit. And to these he is a leader. So who are those? Can you give me one example of a person who is in the Mahabharata war who does not personally profit from it? And to these he is a leader. Some as its opponents, that's very clear, Duryodhana and the rest. And to them, he also is an opponent, the battler of their designs and their slayer. And he seems even to some of them an instigator of all evil and destroyer of their old order and familiar. You remember Shakuni's one, it is Krishna who is behind this. Keeps telling Duryodhana, he is behind, he is the one who's needling them. So Shakuni sees through it all. And he is the third type, the instigator. And sees Krishna as the instigator of all evil and destroyer of the old order and familiar world and secure conventions of virtue and good. Some are representatives of that which has to be fulfilled, and to them he is a counselor, helper, friend, Arjuna. Yes? And Draupadi. So each of these has been described beautifully here in this paragraph. Where the action pursues its natural course, or the doers of the work have to suffer at the hands of its enemies and undergo the ordeals which prepare them for mastery, the avatar is unseen or appears only for occasional comfort and aid. Now, this is very, very important because this is extremely relevant for our own lives. And it is why the Gita is so perennially read and such a amazing text because it touches on the most universal principles of existence. So here it is, where the action pursues its natural course, or the doers of the work have to suffer at the hands of its enemies. Yes? And undergo the ordeals which prepare them for mastery. There the avatar does not intervene. There is no intervention. So all of us who cry, oh, why have I been abandoned? Why did this happen to me? Why have I gone through this? How come there's no divine? How come how come that whom I put all my faith in has abandoned me? Well, here is the answer to that question. So where the action pursues its natural course, for the doers of the work have to suffer at the hands of its enemies and undergo the ordeals which prepare them for mastery. The avatar is unseen or appears only for occasional comfort and aid, just that little bit of aid and comfort, so that we don't doesn't become unwell. But at every crisis, his hand is felt, yet in such a way that all imagine themselves to be the protagonists or the main doers. And even Arjuna, his nearest friend and chief instrument, does not perceive that he is an instrument and has to confess at last that all the while he did not really know his divine friend. You know, at the end of the Gita, what Arjuna tells Krishna. So, this is the wonderful nature of the relationship of the uh, divine teacher and the human disciple. And this is the wonderful relationship of the divine in all our lives. The divine that guides us secretly behind the veil, coming only forward when we need his presence and when we call his presence and when we are open psychically, and leaving us to our own, what should I say, uh, resources, so to speak, when he wants us to suffer and grow and evolve and become a master of one's life and of one's nature, and to be able to withstand all the vicissitudes and develop, as the mother says, nerves of steel. So this is a very, very important aspect of the Gita, which Sri Aurobindo here highlights. So, and interestingly enough, that we all forget when we become great heroes and heroines or whatever, that it was the divine that was leading us. We and I think it's us ourselves, right? And that is the whole Maya, that is the whole mystery of the divine, that he hides himself. And only when and only towards the end we realize that when we fell and when we got up, it was he that had picked us up. So
why is it that some people achieve economic breakthrough in terms of their life purpose?
yes,
And there are other marketing qualities that are not
achievers.
Under the gaze of the divine knowledge. How do you explain that?
Well, they say that the old souls are aware of the presence of divine consciousness, and those that are less aware of the divine are those that it's not that they don't achieve greatness. There are many who do, but their greatness comes at a great price. So, what I mean, how do you differentiate between the two? I think the real differentiation is something that only is internal. It's a differentiation of the vibratory, the quality of your life, the quality of your consciousness, and some actually through the vicissitudes of life um, evolve and are different people in the same life. They begin as something else and end up as something else. So greatness is something that is not really a measure of divine consciousness. However, if you have the divine consciousness or awareness of the divine grace or the divine hand, then you're able to be, there is a security that comes which you don't get otherwise. So
Also,
yes,
let's say, Maybe the person who is granted that grace wears the greatest soul like dream. It's the rest of the world which is playing up the great love. But the person who received it makes it very lightly.
This is my life.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. Doesn't have any even
It doesn't
even realize that that and it doesn't care for much for it. Right?
exactly.
Doesn't care for it. It's the rest of the world that are going on. Yeah, making much of it. That's it. Okay. I don't know if you heard this conversation, but anyway. Um, maybe I should have repeated your question. Next time I will. All right. Where were we?
That's the figure of
Yes.
it.
No, he has received, yes. His intro and has to confess at last that all the while he did not really know his divine friend. He has received counsel from his wisdom, help from his power, has loved and been loved, has even adored without understanding his divine nature. But he has been guided like all others through his own egoism, and the counsel, help, and direction have been given in the language and received by the thoughts of the ignorance. And that is how it is for all of us. We are guided through our egoism, despite our ignorance. And and we receive the divine help and the divine guidance and the divine uh, uh, grace through received by the thoughts of the ignorance until the moment when all has been pushed to the terrible issue of the struggle on the field of Kurukshetra, and the avatar stands at last, still not as a fighter, but as the charioteer in the battle car, which carries the destiny of the fight. He has not revealed himself even to those whom he has chosen. So, here again, Sri Krishna does not reveal himself even to Arjun as the avatar till right at the end, um, when he reveals himself. So, same in our own lives, same in the life of humanity. If the avatar does not come around telling everybody, I am the avatar, right? And neither do most of them even recognize in their lifetimes that they are the avatar. It is only later that that realization comes. Very few actually see it then. Thus, the figure of Krishna becomes, as it were, the symbol. So, what is the figure of Krishna? It becomes the symbol of the divine dealings with humanity. Through our egoism and ignorance, we are moved, thinking we are the doers of the work, vaunting of ourselves as the real causes of the result, and that which moves us we see only occasionally as some vague or even some human and earthly fountain of knowledge, aspiration, force, some principle or light or power which we acknowledge and adore without knowing what it is until the occasion arises that forces us to stand arrested before the veil. Very, very important. Something we need all to meditate. In fact, this paragraph, personally for myself, you could really meditate on this and see how in your own lives these things have happened and how they've happened and when they've happened, so that it becomes a personal, uh, you know, understanding. Is it clear? This paragraph? I think so. So, through our egoism and ignorance, we think we are the doers of the work. And we think the real causes, the result, are, uh, some human and earthly fountain of knowledge, aspiration for some principle or light or power, which we acknowledge and adore without knowing what it is until the occasion arises that forces us to stand arrested before the veil. So we then, when the occasion comes when we, we can see behind the veil of our own egoism, and our own blindness and our own ignorance. We see the divine presence. And the action in which this divine figure moves is the whole wide action of man in life. So the action in which this divine figure moves is the whole wide action of man in life, not merely the inner life, but all of this obscure course of the world, which we can judge only by the twilight of the human reason, as it opens up dimly before our uncertain advance, the little span in front. This is the distinguishing feature of the Gita, that it is the culmination of such an action that gives rise to its teaching. So, this is the distinguishing feature of the Gita, that it is the culmination of such an action which gives rise to its teaching and assigns that prominence and bold relief to the gospel of works, which it enunciates with an emphasis and force we do not find in other Indian scriptures. So this is the distinguishing, the gospel of work, karma yoga. This is one of the, and Sri Aurobindo here said, we do not find this prominence and bold relief given to the karma yoga, the gospel of works, in any other Indian scripture which we find here in the Gita, because it is situated in a real life crisis, in a real life event, and in a real battle. So, not only in the Gita, but in other passages of the Mahabharata, we meet with Krishna, declaring emphatically the necessity of action. There it is, necessity of action. But it is here in the Gita that he reveals its secret and the divinity behind our works. The symbolic companionship. The symbolic companionship of Arjuna and Krishna. What is this? What is symbolic about their companionship? What is he referring to here? The symbolic companionship of Arjuna and Krishna. Anyone? The human and the divine soul. But what is symbolic? Human and divine soul. So this symbolism, who is Arjuna? Huh? The human, yeah, the human's embodied soul. And who is Krishna? The divine. Is expressed elsewhere in Indian thought, in the heavenward journey of Indra and Kutsa, seated in one chariot, in the figure of the two birds upon one tree in the Upanishad, in the twin figures of Nara and Narayan, the seers who do tapasya. Nara is who? Man. Nara, and Narayan is the seers who do tapasya. Here it is the seers who do tapasya together for the knowledge. But in all three, it is the idea of the divine knowledge in which, as the Gita says, all action culminates, that is in view. So it is the idea of the divine knowledge in which, as the Gita says, all action culminates, that is in view. Here it is instead. So in all of these other examples that Sri Aurobindo gives here, Indra and Kutsa, Nara, Narayana, it is the idea of the divine knowledge in which all action culminates, that is in view. Here it is instead the action which leads to that knowledge. Have you seen? The divine knowledge leads to the action. Here in the Gita, the action, the war itself, the action leads to the knowledge. It's the opposite. But in all three, it is the idea of the divine knowledge in which, as the Gita says, all action culminates, that is in view. Here it is instead the action which leads to that knowledge, and in which the divine knower figures himself. Arjuna and Krishna. So this is important. Arjuna and Krishna, this human and this divine, stand together not as seers like Nara, Narayan, and Indra and Kutsa and so on, so on. They do not stand together as seers in the peaceful hermitage of meditation. Do you see them as standing as seers in the peaceful? Are they in some hermitage doing meditation? Or like in the Upanishads, the teacher and the student? What are they doing instead? But as fighter and holder of the reins in the clamorous field, in the midst of the hurtling shafts in the chariot of battle. The teacher of the Gita is therefore not only the God in man who unveils himself in the word of knowledge, but the God in man who moves our whole world of action, by and for whom all our humanity exists and struggles and labors, towards whom all human life travels and progresses. So the teacher of the Gita is the secret master of works and sacrifice, and the friend of the human beings. This is the last and the most important. The gist of the Gita is given here in this one paragraph. Who is the different teacher? And what is his purpose? So the secret of the Gita, and I read once again, the teacher of the Gita is therefore not only the God in man who unveils himself in the word of knowledge, but the God in man who moves our whole world of action. He is the teacher of the Gita, who moves our whole world of action, by and for whom all our humanity exists, by and for whom all our humanity exists, and struggles and labors, towards whom all human life travels and progresses. He is the secret master of works, the secret master of works and sacrifice, and the friend of the human being. So, should we stop here today?